Now for those 3 marks, the SQA say that you have to do 3 things in your conclusion. First of all, you have to make a relative overall judgment, which is connected to evidence presented, and you've also got to provide reasons for your overall judgment. So what we're going to be doing then is finding out what do they mean by this. So first of all, we start with the overall judgment. This is the argument you've already made by saying which was the important factor that led to women gaining the vote. You've mentioned this in your introduction, and you will have mentioned this several times over your essay. But then you connect this with 3 other factors. You've already done this in your essay when you made your evaluative comments. So you'll be able to use these, go back to your essay and find your evaluative comments and use these statements again. You'll also need to back up what you're saying with evidence, but you mustn't bring in any new evidence or any new points into your conclusion. Just use what you've already said in your paragraphs. So the skills we're going to be using then are obviously your thinking skills. That's where your argument comes from, what your point of view is. Secondly, you're going to need your planning skills, because you're going to be going back and looking at your essay, which has been planned and structured. And thirdly, you're going to be looking at communication skills. We're going to look at some particular words and phrases that you can use in your conclusion. So we're going to start then with the overall argument. So we're looking at the 4 factors that led to women gaining the vote. But you have decided with your overall argument which was the most important factor. Was it, in fact, the suffragette campaign, the militant suffragette campaign? Was that the most important factor? Or was it the changing position of women? Or was it the contribution that women made during the First World War? Or was it the peaceful, law-abiding suffragist campaign? So you have decided already, you've already put in your essay what your argument was, which you believed was the most important factor. Now what you're going to be doing is that is your overall judgment, which is going to be repeated in your conclusion. So you will start with something like in conclusion, and then put your most important factor. And then you back that up by giving a reason why. Right, next you're going to be making your 3 relative judgments. And this is where you use your evaluative statements that you've already made in 3 of your paragraphs. Now what do these look like? Well, you will look at one of the factors, you'll describe it, but then saying how this was not as important as the other factor, which was your main argument. Okay, so here's a second way of putting it. And then a third relative judgment that you can make. And then the final part of your conclusion is you will answer the question again. So overall, the suffragette campaign was or was not the most important reason why women got the vote in 1918, and then back it up because. Right, so I'm going to give you an example now of what your conclusion could look like, starting again with the words in conclusion. The changing position of women in society was clearly the most important reason why women gained the vote in 1918, because by 1918 women were no longer seen as incapable and men's attitudes had changed. So that's how you start it, and then you put your 3 relative judgments. even though the suffragette campaign helped gain publicity for the cause, it was negative and did not change men's attitudes or make them feel that they were worthy of the vote. And then another relative judgment. Also, while the peaceful suffragist campaign may have contributed to women gaining the vote, on its own it was failing to change men's attitudes and was largely ignored. And then a third one. Finally, even though women's war work created the atmosphere to give women the vote, it was because they were playing a greater role in society that led to some being given the franchise in 1918. And then your overall statement. Overall, the suffragette campaign was not the most important reason why women gained the vote. It was the women's position in society that had changed by 1918. Right, so I have written out a writing frame for you to help you when you write your own conclusion, doing it this way. But what we find is that this is a very difficult skill to do, particularly at this stage in the year when you're writing your very first conclusion. And so what some students do is decide that instead of going for a 3-mark conclusion, it's easier just to go for a 2-mark conclusion instead. They also may find that they're running out of time, as in the exam you have to complete an essay in less than 45 minutes. So you're getting to the end of your essay, you're running out of time, so a 2-mark conclusion is probably your best option. So here's an easier, shorter version where you leave out the relative judgment. So you just use the writing frame here. You start with in conclusion, and then you use the words on the one hand, on the other hand, and overall. And that should give you the framework to get you a 2-mark conclusion. And I've written these writing frames out, and these will be saved in the files on the Teams page. So there's your 3-mark conclusion. That's one. That one there is the harder one, where you're making the relative judgments. And then the second one here is your 2-mark conclusion. Now what I'd like you to do now is go away and have a try of doing your conclusions, remembering of course that Mrs. Steele and myself are here to help you. So it is tricky. We're not expecting you to get it right first time, and we're here to help you, so you can send in a draft conclusion and we'll mark it for you and maybe point you in the direction of improvement, and then you can add this to your essay that you've got to hand in by the end of term. Okay, so good luck with doing this, and remember that we are here to help you.